Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are picking back up again with Avengers and New Avengers. And what we're doing here is we're picking up a little bit in the aftermath of Infinity, right? Not really immediately after Infinity took place, but specifically the whole detonation of the Terrigen bomb. Now, for those of you guys who never saw the Infinity event, you had two stories going on at the same time, right? The main story focused on Thanos, basically trying to acquire his son, ultimately locating him, and then once he was discovered, his son's, powers more or less activating when Black Bolt and Thanos fought. And the reason why that matters is because in the process, Black Bolt basically destroyed detonated the Terrigen bomb, which spread the Terrigen mist across the world. And so those individuals out there in the world who were Inhumans and simply didn't know, suddenly had their Inhuman powers activated. Now, Thanos, of course, found his son, and you can find out what happens with the rest of that story down in the description. But the idea here is that in the aftermath of that, because Thanos had basically beat Black Bolt within an inch of his life, Black Bolt's been recovering with his aid, or with the aid of his brother, Maximus the Mad. And so with Black Bolt basically recovering, the idea here is that with all these different Inhumans waking up across the world, the intention is to basically travel around the world and to gather these Inhumans together and bring them under the control of the royal family. The funny thing about this is that you actually go into an event from Marvel Comics called Inhumanity and Inhuman, which really sees everything but that happening. It's actually a pretty cool line of comics, and I don't think we ever really covered it. I want to say it was Charles Soule who wrote it, and it was great, right? But from there, we switch over to Wakanda, right? And we pick up with Black Panther. And Black Panther here is basically struggling with this inner turmoil, right? The fact that he doesn't really consider whatever this action is to be weakness, that it's not really doubt, that he knows who he is. But the very idea of what he's pondering here, right? The very idea of what he's considering destroying a world is something that he's wrestling with on a moral scale. And the people he's talking to are basically his ancestors. Now, here's an important thing that I want you guys to understand, that I want you guys to know about. If you saw the Black Panther film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was communicating with his ancestors in the afterlife. This was not a thing that Black Panther could do until Jonathan Hickman was writing the Fantastic Four, and he introduced the idea that with Shuri becoming the new Black Panther after the events of Doom War and T'Challa basically being forced to step down, that T'Challa gained a new source of power in becoming the King of the Dead. And what that meant was he could now communicate and talk to his ancestors. So that's why this happens here, right? That's why you see it in the MCU. It's a relatively new thing. And so communicating and talking to his ancestors is an interesting concept, because he basically kind of espouses this idea, and when they ask, what are you struggling with? He basically says, in the next hour, there's going to be another incursion. And when that happens, our world is going to face off, or is going to come face to face with another world that houses not villains or evil individuals, but people who are actually heroes like us. They're good guys. They've done good for their world. This will be the first time that we have an incursion where we have to face a threat like this. And my concern here is that we may end up having to destroy these people's worlds. And the response of his ancestors is, so? And it's the coolest response, because he's like, what do you mean so, right? Like I've done murder, I've done terrible things, and I've done it in a way where I've been king and I've did what I needed to do. But there's a difference between taking out individuals who are a credible threat to Wakanda and taking out what are basically innocent people, right? Because the reality of this is, if they face off against the Great Society and a conflict breaks out and they have to destroy the world of the Great Society, it's not just those heroes who die. It's billions of men, women, and children across the surface, across that world, who die as well, right? People who don't even know what's going on, who are going about their normal lives, and then suddenly the world just ends, right? Like, that's what we're talking about here. And the response of this really comes by way of Black Panther's father himself, right? T'Chaka. And he basically says, here's the thing to understand, right? This is, you are of Wakanda. You are a king of Wakanda. You have to understand the price that comes with that, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. The question you have to ask here is, over the time that our kingdom has been in existence, over the time that Wakanda has been alive, how many people have we turned away? How many people who were seeking refuge have we told, you can't come here? Because it was important to keep our society safe and secret and hidden away from the world. How many times have we done that? And how many men, women, and children did we kill by virtue of that? But it's what was best for our kingdom. It's what was best for our people. And he says, that's what you're facing here. Anything that could be a threat to Wakanda is a threat worth destroying. That's the way it is. That's how Wakanda is. That's how the ancestors of Black Panther saw it. That's how Black Panther himself is being told to see it. If it's a threat to Wakanda, then it needs to go. So sure, you're going to wipe out a world of however many billions of people if you decide to detonate an antimatter bomb on that earth. But the reality is, either it's them or it's you. And as a king, Your job is to protect your people, which means to choose yourself. It means to choose our Earth and destroy theirs in the process. If they have a problem with it, sorry about your luck. Wouldn't want to be in your shoes. That's just the way it goes. And so again, it's intriguing here because one of the things that's kind of asked here at the very last moment, when all the other ancestors have basically departed, is T'Chaka pulls his son aside for a second and asks him, there's one last thing. Have you killed the Atlantean yet, right? Have you killed Namor the Submariner? Now, for those of you guys who don't know what that's about, we talked about that earlier when we began the Avengers and New Avengers series. You should check out the Avengers versus X-Men event. When Namor was part of the Phoenix Force, he basically destroyed a huge portion of Wakanda. So because he had committed such an offense against the Wakandan people, that's why the ancestors are asking. The other part of this is Doctor Strange basically reappears, right, after having been at the Sinner's Market. Now, we will learn more about that. What we end up doing at this point is we jump to Bruce Banner and we jump to Beast. Now, again, Bruce Banner is the new kid on the block. He was just recently brought into the Illuminati team in order to basically help them figure out what to do, right? Because the reality is, with all the different ideas they have, they've yet to come to a solid solution. And Bruce Banner has a unique mind insofar as he's the most knowledgeable when it comes to gamma radiation, but he's also considered to be one of the smartest men in the world. And so the notion here is maybe he can help them think of something that they haven't really thought about before. But to show you guys just how far things are at the moment, we basically pick up with Tony Stark. And Tony Stark is having a conversation with Black Swan and basically saying, here's what's going to happen, right? I have just constantly been perplexed by this problem. I've constantly been perplexed by this idea of what's going on with the incursions, and you giving us these answers, basically telling us there's nothing we can do, that either we can destroy other worlds and hope we survive to the end, or we just perish, when one of the other worlds destroys us. But at the end of the day, there's nothing we can do to stop it. And his whole, the stance of Tony Stark here is he's a futurist, right? He's the idea man. If Tony Stark can't think of it, it cannot be solved. That's just the way that it works. That's just how his mind works. He is, in the most extreme degree, a guy who solves problems. And from what he's being told by Black Swan, who seems to have this information that she's just not revealing to Tony Stark, that there is no way to solve the problem, right? There's nothing that they can do. And this is why Tony Stark is getting so frustrated, because the question she asks, are you so sure that this is the problem, or do you think the real problem is that you're simply just in denial? You're simply refusing to accept the fact that there is nothing you can do, right? Every single threat you've ever faced in your life as a superhero up to this point has been some physical, tangible person you can fight against, right? Galactus shows up on Earth and you guys threaten him with the ultimate nullifier, or you grab the help of the Silver Surfer, or just through sheer force of will, you manage to topple him, right? Thanos shows up, you guys fight him off. This villain shows up, you fight. This villain shows up, you fight. It's a tangible thing. That's been your life. You always overcome the odds. You always come out on top. But for the first time in your life, Tony Stark, you guys are facing off against a threat that cannot be solved with mathematical formulas. It cannot be fixed with some infinity gauntlet. There's nothing you can do. There's no day to be saved here. Your days are numbered. When that number comes to 0, there'll be nothing left. And you, along with everything that you know, is going to die. Tony just cannot accept that fact, right? And so what he basically, really in his paranoia, I would say, ends up stepping up and saying, here's what's going to happen. We're going to deal with this incursion, right? We're going to cope with this incursion and do whatever in the hell we have to do in order to basically end it. But then following that, I'm going to bring in a telepath. I'm going to have somebody like Emma Frost come in here and probe your mind. I'm going to have them, basically tear your mind apart and find out everything you know. We're going to go through every scrap of information. We're going to go through everything that we can to find out what this truth is. And her whole idea here is, I've never lied to any of you. I've never ever lied to a single one of you. And she gives the best response here, right? Tony asks, have you ever heard of lies of omission? And she says, yes. That's what the ignorant people call displays of their ignorance, right? You want to believe there's something there because you're too stupid to accept the fact that there's not. That's what's so cool about this, right? She's such a great character. She's so wildly interesting. And so, of course, with Tony Stark storming off, this leads to Reed Richards being there, and he kind of asks her what in the world was going on, and she says, it's just a man coming to the end of himself, right? Tony Stark coming to the realization there's nothing he can do. There's nothing he can offer here, that all of his vaunted intelligence and all of his gadgets and all of his Iron Man armors, they're useless in the face of all this. And so from there, we pick up with basically the Illuminati team showing up on the alternate reality Earth, right? The Great Society Earth. And as soon as they arrive, it's kind of funny because the Great Society sort of looks up and says, okay, like we don't really know what this is, right? They're not black priests. They're not map makers. We don't really know what these guys are. Are they peaceful like we are, or are they monsters? Like, we don't know what the deal is here. And that's what's kind of cool, is because as soon as the Illuminati show up, the Great Society greet them as friends. And this is a really interesting concept, right? Because you see this is exactly what the Justice League would do, right? The Justice League would approach trying to attain diplomacy, that fighting would be a last resort. And much like what Sun God's doing right now, Superman would do the same thing, right? He would say, okay, like, let's see if there's a way for us to talk this out, right? If this was any other character in Marvel, they would just start fighting, right? Like, Marvel's violent, man. like all the superheroes in Marvel are just mean, man. Like, we're just gonna fight you first, and then like we'll ask some questions along the way, and then if over the course of this fight we realize you're the good guys, then we'll stop, right? Like, Marvel superheroes are kind of dicks, to be honest with you guys. They really kind of are. I love Marvel to death, been reading them for 25 years, but they're kind of dicks. Like, it's just the way the superheroes are written, and I love it, right? So one of the things that kind of goes into this is you have, of course, Wayne, right? The pastiche of Batman, basically, the Marvel version of Batman, who kind of says, like, how can we trust you, right? And more important than that, how do you know you can trust us? And the response of Beast is, we've been watching you, right? We constructed a bridge that let us look into alternate realities, and we came across your world because you survived 2 incursions. And they say, no, we actually saw we survived 3, and it's kind of like, okay, but we only saw 2. So what you end up getting here is this little degree of an explanation that when the question's asked by Reed Richards, one of these incursions you survived by basically moving your universe out of phase, right? That you more or less made your universe intangible, right? The way the Vision makes himself intangible, so if you throw something at him, it'll just pass right through him. That's what they did with their universe. That instead of allowing the Earths to crash into each other, they moved their universe out of phase. So basically the other Earth and the other universe, they just passed right through each other. And when they asked, how do you do that? Like, how were you able to pull that off? They said, well, using something called the wishing box. Now, here's my mistake. I originally thought they were talking about a cosmic cube, and I totally forgot that, like, there are different, really alternate reality versions of Infinity Stones, right? And that's what they basically say, right? It's basically a cube that's made up of 6 planes of forever glass. Basically, this kind of material that's made up of the fabric of the universe. It's an Infinity Gauntlet, is really all it is. Now, this is why this is kind of cool, because in Marvel Comics, as far as I'm aware, this is the first time we've seen an alternate reality version of the Infinity Gauntlet that does not look like the Gauntlet. Traditionally in Marvel Comics, no matter what universe you're talking about, when Marvel references the Infinity Gauntlet, we basically get a glove with Infinity Stones on it. And the reason why is because it's recognizable, right? Like, people see that and like, oh, that's the Infinity Gauntlet. In this day and age, because of the events of Avengers Endgame and like Avengers Infinity War, you see anybody walking down the street or you go to a con and you see a gauntlet, you immediately know what it is. And even comic book readers were just like, I know exactly what that is. That's the Infinity Gauntlet. Everybody knows what it is. It's so recognizable. And it makes sense that in almost any other alternate reality story, you would see it designed the exact same way, just being wielded by somebody under a different circumstance. In this reality, that is basically just forever glass, right? It's just five pieces of glass that come into the shape of a cube, which really begs the question, is this the same thing as a cosmic cube, right? What would happen if you combine the power of a cosmic cube with an Infinity Gauntlet, right? What would that look like? Honestly, I don't really think you'd see a difference, right? I mean, if you can, basically use the cosmic cube to do the exact same thing that you would do with an Infinity Gauntlet, then what's the difference, right? I mean, I guess maybe you can do it like twice as fast, or you can like do it twice as much. I don't know, like infinite power times 2. I don't really know how you mathematically quantify infinity by a factor of 2. I don't really know if you even can do that. I'm not a mathematician. I'm sure one of you guys out there in the Rob Corps went to like MIT or something like that, and you're good with maths, but the whole thing here is that there's a lot of uncertainty, I guess is the best word to use. Ryder is highly skeptical of the superheroes, right? He's highly skeptical of the Illuminati and says, okay, here's the issue though. You show up on our doorstep and you tell us that you come bringing peace, that you're here for a peaceful resolution. But here's the problem. We've roughly got about 7.5 hours before both our universes end because the Earths are going to crash into each other. And where Iron Man and Reed Richards and all these guys are talking about different ideas, then the question becomes, okay, what are these ideas that you have and what happens if they fail? And that's kind of that's when Black Panther basically speaks up and says, we have a plan, right? We have an antimatter bomb. We basically built this bomb to destroy an entire world. And that's when Reed's kind of like, are you guys sure you don't have anything? And Sun God's like, I already told you, we have hope, right? We have hope that things will get better. And that's when Namor kind of makes fun of him and says, well, I hope you can come up with something better than hope, right? Like, because this is a serious time and we kind of need a serious solution. We don't need this Justice League philosophy of resting on your laurels and just hoping things get better and that's enough. No, we need like actual solutions to a problem. And that's what makes this interesting, right? Kind of these, two diametrically opposing views. Now, something else that I want to throw to your attention that's kind of going on here at the same time. And it's very easy for us to kind of skip over it, but we're not going to. Maximus the Mad is a very interesting character. In reality, he is in a lot of ways similar to the Joker. His schemes don't really make sense to anybody but himself. But what he's come to realize is that with everything happening, they're going to need all hands on deck. And there are some individuals who had been defeated at the hands of the Avengers or whoever that are wildly powerful, albeit evil, people, and they are going to be needed. What Maximus the Mad does here is he basically fires up a high-powered laser, and with the help of Black Swan, starts to crack the containment device that holds Thanos and the Black Order. Maximus the Mad is freeing the Mad Titan and the Black Order. This is cool. Corvus Glaive, Proxima Midnight, all these characters, Maximus the Mad is setting them loose. Like, he's getting ready to just let them return back and do their thing. And so because of all this, with kind of switching back to the Avengers and I guess to the Illuminati and the Great Society, things kind of keep going back and forth, right? It's this constant kind of conversation that's going on. Namor is losing patience, right? Because you basically have them stalling the inevitable. Well, surely we can come up with an idea. Surely there's something we can do. We can talk this out. Well, what if we don't succeed? Are you going to destroy our world? Well, I mean, we don't want to destroy your world. And they're more or less beating around the bush, right? It's more or less the Illuminati kind of beating around the bush. And instead of outright saying, if things go south, we're going to blow your world to smithereens, it's kind of like, well, it won't come to that. We'll find a solution. We'll find a way to make it work. All this kind of going back and forth, Namor's getting very agitated and very irritated. And in that frustration, he takes his trident, throws it at Ryder, and basically says, here's what's going to happen, guys. I'm tired of waiting for the inevitable. The inevitable is that none of us are going to be able to come up with a solution in the span of 8 hours that's going to spare both of our worlds. If I am going to become this thing, whatever this thing is, this evil human being, this person that's willing to cast aside the lives of billions of people to protect himself, then by God, I'll do it at a time of my choosing. And so when he goes with Ryder being attacked, Sun God responds, and Ryder says, you finally understand what's going on. You finally see what's happening here. It could not have been any other way. And with that, Sun God lashes out, and the battle is on. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, cliffhangers, and I'll catch you all later. Peace. No.